Pedro Gomez from ESPN, covering a little cactus action for you and covering this scandal, of course. Follow him on Twitter at Pedro Gomez, ESPN, MLB Insider. And Pedro, I'll start off with this. I never thought, at least I thought it would take maybe another 20, 30 years. I'd be really, really old at that time because I'm already old. But I figured it'd take another 20, 30 years before I saw a team be hated more than the Heatles. Now we have found it, baby. The Astros will take over the Heatles spot as the most hated team in pro sports. What do you think about that?
It's hard to argue it, Orlandito. It's really hard to argue because they've earned it, so to speak.
I mean, have you ever seen a group of people like mishandle things as badly as these guys have?
I cannot recall anything that I can think of in my lifetime where the public relations issues have been just it's gone from bad to worse almost every single time, and that's not just now. That was during the World Series when that assistant GM yelled at the three female reporters.
That's right.
That was locking out a Detroit Free Press, member of the BBWAA after a game. They have continuously stepped on themselves, and it's been amazing because it's not just a couple of clubs or players that have been lashing out. It's been across. Like Mike Trout this morning. Mike Trout is a guy that has always stayed out of controversy, and he had pointed words for the Astros. So that tells you right there, when you got Mike Trout coming at you, who never says anything bad about anybody, that you've probably done something wrong.
And Pedro, I've seen you report. I mean, the reactions from certain players. There is serious disgust by the actions of the Astros all across the league. I mean, this is as pissed off as I've seen baseball players ever. Actually, and you're closer to the game than any of us. Have you ever seen something move players this much?
No, I mean, there'll be an issue where, maybe one club will be against another club or a player from another club. Hey, look, a few years ago, Manny Machado, when he slid in hard on Dustin Pedroia and, injured him, and Pedroia's career basically has been over ever since then. There was some animosity from the Red Sox toward Machado. But overall, like the way that almost universally everyone from across baseball has risen up in a common voice against the Astros, I've never seen anything like this. No.
And let me tell you, I talked about this on this show earlier, and on the Sirius show that I have also. The Astros have chosen a really ugly path, my brother, because if you want to be Lance Armstrong, go ahead, man. You want to be OJ, you want to be Pete Rose, you want to be defiant, you go ahead. But if you want to be Michael Vick or Jason Giambi or Andy Pettit or Robert Downey Jr., we can forgive, man. We can forgive. But when you take that defiant approach and you take that ignorant approach and you start basically, it's a half-ass apology, that's the problem, man. You look at all those guys that I talked about. Forget about whatever crimes or infractions they committed. The fact that they were in denial, they chose a road, and society put them down that ugly road that Lance Armstrong could never get out of, and neither can Ryan Braun. But the other guys, like a Giambi, we look at them different. You look at Robert Downey Jr. different. You look at the people that are actually contrite about the things that they've gone through, and we're pretty forgiving as a society. Do you agree these guys chose the wrong road here?
Well, I think they've gotten bad advice. I mean, because you see almost as if maybe some crisis PR firm came in and offered them talking points, and they have maintained those talking points, but that's not the route. Look, if you speak from the heart, like what you're saying, a lot of times people are very willing to forgive, no doubt about it. But they've almost and look, I've talked to a lot of players who have told me the same message. they've almost painted themselves as though they're somehow victims of all of what's gone on. And it's like, no, just own it. Own it and say, look, we cheated. But you've never heard them say we cheated. All we hear is we did something wrong. We got caught. We shouldn't have done this. But at no point has anybody said, look, we cheated. We went beyond what we should have ever done, and we deserve whatever's coming our way. I think if you have a consistent message that's from the heart, like you say, I think a lot of times people are like, you know what, everyone makes mistakes, because we all make mistakes.
Of course.
Of course. But when you try to paint yourself as a victim or that you weren't truly responsible for what happened, well, that just doesn't wash.
Right. No, I'm with you there 1,000%. Let me ask you, Pedro Gomez, of course, from ESPN, joining us. Are they not admitting it because if they go all out, then that opens the door for stripping the title, which I think Rob Manfred has completely dropped the ball, because that would have been the ultimate example for everybody, no matter where you stand. That would have been, and you would have had less anger now at this point. But overall, are they avoiding not coming clean because they feel that if they do come clean, then that opens up the door for them to be officially stripped of the title?
Well, look, I mean, you know what, Manfred has already said he is not taking away the title. So I don't think that's going to happen. I have my own personal views of why the title wasn't stripped away, and I think it's because, look, if Manfred had taken that step and said, you know what, 2017, nobody won, because you're not going to give it to the Dodgers.
No,
it doesn't go to the second place finisher.
No.
It's vacated. It's empty. There was no World Series champion that year. But then all of a sudden, okay, Jim Crane will call dozens of owners and say, you know what, if he does this to me, he can do it to anybody. And he works for us. We don't work for him. And, you know, no matter what you think about a commissioner of any sport, the owners are the bosses of that commissioner.
Yeah.
So I think that if Manfred had gone that route, I think Crane probably could have gotten enough owners to say, let's get rid of this guy and let's get someone in there who's going to do what we want. And I think that might be at the foundation of why a title was not taken away.
So let me ask you, on the flip side, there's a bunch of owners that probably are pissed. Aren't they going to want Manfred out for not actually vacating? The reverse could be true, too. He could be out of his job in the next year or two because they weren't happy with the – because if this thing is mishandled the way it's mishandled, we know the Astros mishandled it, but now Major League Baseball also has mishandled it, and now it's going to fester for a while. So wouldn't the reverse be true by the owners?
It could. It certainly could. And that's I doubt that will happen, but it certainly could be where enough owners say, you know what, this is wrong. That title should not have been won by them. I just think that that's such a small fraternity. It's only 30 of them that I think they kind of tend to stick together. Look, they have quarterly owners meetings. They get together. They're all, you know, from the same billionaires club. And I think that, you know, when you really look at the end, they're going to stick together probably.
Is Crane a light guy amongst the owners? Because sometimes that you have your factions of owners that are stronger than others. Where does Crane stand in that group from what you've heard?
You know, it's probably somewhere in the middle is what I've heard. But, again, there's only 30. And I think they know that they have to stick together. And if you're an outlier, look, he's not Mark Schott. He's not somebody that, you know, the other owners were like, we got to get rid of this person.
Right.
He's not that guy. So I just think that they're going to abide by each other, and that for that reason, Manfred's already said no title's going to be taken away. Now, his choice of words yesterday at the Grapefruit League Media Day, where he said it's just a piece of metal. Boy, that I was talking to some people today, even in Major League uniforms, who were like, really, then why are we all playing for it if it's just a piece of metal?
Right.
I can go buy a piece of metal wherever I want. You know, that means a lot more. It means a lot more to fans. It means a lot more to everybody. You know, I mean, you're in Miami. You see those two titles.
Yes.
They have two pieces of metal at the stadium that mean something to Marlins fans and to the players who played on those clubs. So, I think that was probably a very poorly chosen pair of words or sentence that he put together there.
All right, so Pedro, you're around baseball more than any of us. You're around these players more than any of us. They confide in you. They talk with you. You heard that they're trying to protect the players this year about throwing at players and that they could be, fining them. It could be going stronger at them. So that's also in a way to kind of protect these Astro players. How bad is this season going to be for these Astro players? I know fans are going to be relentless, but what are you hearing amongst the players? Because even if they could get thrown out for beating somebody, are they going to still go after them? What are you foreseeing right now?
Yeah, I think you're going to see some players who maybe take justice into their own hands. The old frontier justice ways of baseball back in the day. It's funny because Alex Wood, who was on that 2017 Dodgers club and is back with the Dodgers this year, I was talking to him just last week, and on camera he goes, that the ironic thing is that if somebody does do something like that, they're going to be suspended longer than any Astros player who cheated, which is true.
Yes.
Which is true.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. You're right about that. It's like the NFL suspending Josh Gordon for a whole bunch of weed violations, and then Ray Rice gets two games initially for knocking on his fiancée and spitting on her until, of course, they got busted, and then they gave him 12. But, it is kind of crazy. So you're expecting this to be an aggressive type of thing from the players going after the Astros to send a message?
I mean, look, players have been known – something that happened when they were in A-ball, they'll take out retribution 8-10 years later when they see someone in the right situation in the major leagues. And I've talked to players who are like, yeah, back in A-ball, that guy threw at me and screw him. I knew I was going to get him back. I didn't know how long it would take, but I was going to get my revenge. These guys have, elephant memory. They remember stuff forever.
Yeah.
And even if you don't see it necessarily this year, I believe you are going to see forms of retribution coming over the course of years. That's just the way that the mentality of the baseball player is. It may be viewed as a negative by some fans, but that's the way they police themselves for decades. And I would be shocked if that didn't take place going forward. I think that the Astros are in for a very long season, especially those 81 road games. And, it's going to be relentless. I would say even like the organist or whoever picks the music at opposing stadium.
Oh.
You're going to hear Todd Rundgren. I don't want to work. I want to bang on the drum all day, or Knock Three Times by Tony Orlando and Dawn. I mean, I think you're going to hear from opposing clubs a lot throughout the season.
Yeah, no. Now let me ask you: is there any chance, because Rob Manfred has put in some new rules? So when a reliever comes in against the Astros and he plunks the first guy, does he walk over to the ump before the ump throws him on and say, "Yo, there's a 3-batter minimum. I get to hit 2 more guys." Come on.
Oh man. Well, they do have a stipulation in there that it's if you're not tossed out of the game, if there's no injury. So the umps are still within their rights to toss somebody. But you know what? Umpires tend to be old school as well. They might say, no, that pitch got away from him. I can't prove that he was doing anything. I mean, look, you're open to interpretation.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. You definitely are. Do you like that rule? Because I can't stand it. I'm just saying.
The 3-batter minimum.
I can't stand you. You're now forcing pitchers to do something they're not made to do, and now you're putting managers in a position that they're making decisions that are almost out of their control now. And I mean, Tony La Russa, if he was still managing, he would have lost his freaking mind with this rule. I'm just wondering you're a baseball nut. You tell me. You like this rule?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're taking strategy away from a manager, and I'm never in favor of that. So, I know they want to speed up the game, I honestly believe that a lot of the reason that the game has slowed down in the last decade or so is because of the sign stealing. It's because you have catcher pitcher visits that were extraordinarily high because you had to switch signs for every batter almost. And all of a sudden, you've got these multiple signs going for every batter because you knew that something was going on. That slows the game down almost more than anything has. So hopefully that elimination takes place, and that will help speed up the game. The three-batter minimum, I'm not in favor of taking strategy away from a manager.
Well, hold on a second, dude. I've solved the problem now. We don't have to do all this stuff. Let's just put buzzards in the pitcher and the catcher. That way they have it and they can communicate with each other on the pitchers and nobody knows. He can tap inside his little glove. Hey, ta-ta-ta, two taps, it's a fastball. 3 taps, it's a curve, whatever. And that's it. We can put buzzards and we can have MLB officials that are in somewhere monitoring all that buzzard stuff. Look, the Astros came up with a solution in the middle of the cheating. How about that?
Oh, man. The issue with that whole thing is, let's say a manager or a pitching coach calls for a pitch. Well, we've seen a pitcher shake off. The pitcher has to be sold on throwing that pitch. So, it just opens up a Pandora's box as well.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, outside of that, what are you thinking about our Marlins? Can we get to 70 wins?
I mean, they're moving in the right direction, and that's something that I think a lot of Marlins fans haven't seen for a while. So that's a good thing. 70 wins, the National League doesn't have the juggernauts outside of the Dodgers that the American League does. So that helps everybody trying to avoid 100 losses. If you're in the National League West, you got to play the Dodgers 19 times. That's going to hurt you because they are that good.
Loaded.
But there's not that powerhouse other than the Dodgers. So I would say that 70 is probably realistic, probably because the National League doesn't have the powerhouse clubs that the American League does.
Well, I was at FanFest. We were broadcasting out there. We had Mike Hill on. And I asked him, hey, man, are you going to be able to keep guys this time around? And he said yes. He said that this is the way they're going to build things through the draft, and then as they develop them, that they will be able to keep them. And I said, because it's got to be a bitch for you to, draft a kid, develop a kid, and then watch him play as a star somewhere else. And he agreed with me. Do you believe that this Marlins group will keep some players now?
I think until they do it, you have to be skeptical.
Right.
There's been so many administrations in Miami that have said, no, we'll keep everyone together. And then, after the 97 season, boom, Moises Alou was traded less than a week after winning the World Series.
Right.
The 03 club, same, just tear it down. The club just a few years ago. I mean, when you think of the outfield of Stanton, Osuna, and Yelich together, that's an all-star team outfield almost.
I know.
They've got to earn the belief from the fans, and there's only one way to do that, and that's through your action.
Follow him on Twitter at Pedro Gomez, ESPN. He's a terrific person and an excellent MLB insider. Pedro, as always, you are a stud, my brother. Thank you for taking some time, man. Un abrazo.
Un abrazo, Azuri. Hablamos pronto.
You got it. Be good. There you go. The great Pedro
Bye.
Gomez. You got it, my man. Thank you. He is awesome, man. He's just a great dude. I've had Pedro on my show now for 30 years. 30 years.
Only 30.
30 years. About 30, man. 30, man. Yeah, 30 years. I used to have him on my Spanish show, La Ensalada Deportiva. And he used to be working for the Oakland Tribune in those days, covering the Bash Brothers at that time. And then he, moved around and went from one paper to another and went to Arizona and then went to and been on ESPN for a long, long time now. But I've known that man for 30 years on my show.